Hi, I'm Kira Daniels. 3 years ago, my family cornered me in our dining room on Mercer Island and told me I was a financial burden they could no longer carry. They demanded I shut down my failing YouTube channel and get a real job. What they didn't know was that I was pulling in $2 million a month and had been quietly paying their mortgage, my brother's law school tuition, and my sister's wedding venue deposit. They believed I was broke because I let them think it. Now their perfect lives have collapsed, and I'm the only one left standing with anything real to offer. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It started on a Tuesday in late October when the rain was coming down in sheets, the kind of Seattle downpour that turns the streets into rivers and makes you question why anyone lives in the Pacific Northwest. I remember sitting in my car outside the family house, watching water bead and roll down the windshield, delaying the inevitable moment when I'd have to walk through that door. My father had sent a text earlier that morning. "Family meeting tonight, 7 sharp. Be there, no excuses." It wasn't a request. It never was with Gordon Daniels. I'd been living in a small rental in Wallingford for the past year, a place with creaky floors and a kitchen window that overlooked a neighbor's vegetable garden. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The house on Mercer Island, the one I grew up in, had always felt more like a museum than a home. Everything was for show. The marble countertops, the custom drapes, the family photos arranged just so on the mantel. Even as a kid, I knew better than to leave my shoes in the hallway or put a glass down without a coaster. When I finally walked in, shaking rain from my jacket, I immediately felt the shift in the air. My mother, Diane, was standing by the window with her arms crossed. She didn't turn to greet me. My father sat at the head of the dining table, reading glasses perched on his nose, a stack of papers in front of him. Tyler, my older brother, leaned against the doorframe with that look he always wore when he thought he'd won something. Vanessa sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, but I could tell by the way her thumb had stopped moving that she was listening. Nobody said hello. Nobody asked how I was. Gordon looked up over the rim of his glasses and said, "Kira, sit down. We need to discuss your situation." I pulled out a chair slowly, the legs scraping against the hardwood. "What situation?" I asked. Tyler let out a short laugh, the kind that wasn't really about humor. He pushed off the doorframe and walked closer. "Come on, Kira. We all know your little YouTube thing isn't working out. You've been doing it for what, 4 years now? And you're still living in that dump in Wallingford." I didn't flinch. I'd learned a long time ago not to react to Tyler. He fed off reactions. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. "Dad's been covering your expenses, Kira. We thought you'd figure it out by now, but it's pretty clear this content creator phase isn't paying off." My mother turned from the window then, her face smooth and unreadable. "We're not trying to hurt you, sweetheart. We just think it's time you consider something more stable, something with benefits, a salary." I felt my hands tighten around the edge of the chair. They had no idea, not a single clue. For 3 years, I'd been funneling money into their accounts under different names, paying bills they thought were being handled by my father's investments or Tyler's legal internships or some trust fund they'd convinced themselves existed. I'd watched my father's business nearly collapse 2 years ago and quietly bailed him out through a shell company. I'd paid for Vanessa's entire destination wedding in Napa without her ever knowing the vendor checks came from an LLC I controlled. I'd kept them afloat while they looked down on me. Gordon slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is a job listing, corporate communications position at a firm downtown. I have a contact there. You'd start at $60,000 a year. It's entry level, but it's respectable." I stared at the paper but didn't touch it. "I'm not interested," I said. Tyler laughed again, louder this time. "Of course you're not, because that would require actual work." Vanessa chimed in without looking up. "Kira, you're almost 30. You can't keep pretending you're going to be some internet celebrity. It's embarrassing." That word landed heavy. Embarrassing. Diane stepped forward, her voice soft but laced with something sharper underneath. "We've supported you long enough. If you're not going to take this seriously, then we need to have a different conversation." I looked around the room, at my father's stern face, at Tyler's smug grin,
at Vanessa's disinterest, at my mother's careful concern that was really just disappointment dressed up nicely. And I realized something I'd known for a long time, but never let myself fully believe. They didn't see me. They saw a problem, a failure, a burden. I stood up. The chair scraped again, louder this time. "I'm not taking the job," I said. Gordon's jaw tightened. "Then we're cutting you off. No more help. No more safety net. You're on your own." Tyler crossed his arms. "Maybe that's what you need, a reality check." I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair and slung it over my arm. I looked each of them in the eye, one by one, and said, "You have no idea what reality looks like." I walked out into the rain without another word. The door clicked shut behind me, and I stood on the porch for a moment, letting the cold water soak through my hair and down the back of my neck. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, water droplets clinging to the screen. It was an alert from my business account. Another deposit had cleared. $63,000 from a brand partnership. I stared at the number, then looked back at the glowing windows of the house. They thought I was drowning. They had no idea I'd been holding all of them above water. I drove back to Wallingford in silence, the wipers working overtime against the storm. My apartment was dark when I got in, just the faint blue glow from the router in the corner. I dropped my jacket on the floor and sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. My laptop was open on the desk across the room, the screensaver cycling through photos from old video shoots, me smiling in front of a camera, me holding up a finished project, me pretending everything was light and easy and fun. I thought about the channel, Craft and Coast. I'd started it on a whim during my senior year in college, filming myself refinishing a thrift store chair in my dorm room. The video got 200 views, then 1,000, then 10,000. By the time I graduated, I had 50,000 subscribers, and brands were starting to reach out. My family thought it was cute, a hobby, something I'd grow out of once I got a real job. But I didn't stop. I kept filming, kept editing, kept posting, and the channel grew. 100,000 subscribers, 500,000, 1,000,000, then 2,000,000, then 5. The money came slowly at first, a few $100s here and there from ad revenue. Then sponsorships started rolling in. Home goods companies, furniture brands, paint suppliers. They wanted me to feature their products, and they paid well. Really well. I reinvested everything back into the channel. Better cameras, better lighting, a small studio space I rented under a business name. I hired an editor, a manager, a contracts lawyer. I built an entire operation, and I did it quietly. I didn't post about the money. I didn't flex. I just worked. And because I didn't talk about it, my family assumed I was struggling. They saw my modest apartment and my old car and my thrifted clothes, and they filled in the blanks with their own assumptions. Kira's channel isn't making money. Kira's barely getting by. Kira needs our help. So when my father's commercial real estate deal started tanking and he couldn't make the mortgage on the Mercer Island house, I stepped in. I created an LLC, transferred funds, and paid it off under the guise of an investor buyout he thought he'd orchestrated himself. When Tyler racked up $70,000 in law school debt and couldn't get approved for refinancing, I paid it through a third-party scholarship fund. I kept them afloat while they looked down on me.
When Vanessa needed $15,000 for her wedding venue deposit and threw a fit because Dad's account was empty, I wired it anonymously. I kept them alive, and they never knew. I told myself it was because I didn't want the attention, didn't want them asking questions or trying to control what I did with my money. But sitting there in the dark, soaked and exhausted, I realized the truth. I did it because some part of me still wanted them to see me, to recognize me, to be proud, even if they didn't know why. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. From Ethan. "Hey, you okay? Saw the weather's bad up there." I smiled for the first time that night. Ethan Monroe. We'd met at a creator conference in Portland 2 years ago. He ran a travel channel, documenting off-the-grid locations and sustainable living projects. He was kind in a way that didn't ask for anything in return. We'd stayed in touch, started visiting each other, started meaning more to each other than either of us said out loud. "I'm fine," I typed back. "Just family stuff." 3 dots appeared immediately, then his response. Want to talk about it? Not tonight, I replied, but maybe soon. Take your time, he wrote. I'm here. I set the phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The rain hammered against the window. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm went off and then stopped. I closed my eyes and let myself feel it. The anger, the hurt, the exhaustion. And underneath it all, something else. A strange, cold clarity. They'd drawn the line. They'd told me I was on my own. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to prove them wrong. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their help. I didn't even need them to know the truth. What I needed was to finally stop carrying them. I sat up slowly, wiped my face, and opened my laptop. The dashboard for my channel loaded. 5.3 million subscribers, 214 million views. My last video, posted 3 days ago, already had 800,000 views and 12,000 comments. I scrolled through a few. Your content saved my living room. Thank you for keeping it real. I love how you don't make everything look perfect. You make it feel possible.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I took a breath. Then I opened my banking app. The main account showed 2.1 million in available funds. The business account held another 900,000. Separate LLCs for different revenue streams held more. I'd built an empire in secret, and the only people who didn't know were the ones who should have been cheering the loudest. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I'd keep building. Tonight, I'd let the rain wash it all away. When I woke up the next morning, the sky was still gray, but the rain had softened to a drizzle. I made coffee in my small kitchen, the smell filling the apartment and making everything feel a little more normal. My phone had blown up overnight. Texts from Tyler, 2 from Vanessa, a long email from my mother with the subject line, "We need to talk." I didn't open any of them. Instead, I called Derek Walsh, my business manager. He picked up on the second ring. "Kira," he said, his voice warm and alert. "What's going on?" "I need you to pull all family payments," I said. "Everything. The mortgage cover, Tyler's loan buyout, Vanessa's vendor checks, all of it." There was a pause. "You sure?" "I'm sure." He didn't ask why. That's what I liked about Derek. He didn't need the drama. He just got things done. "I'll handle it today," he said. "Anything else?" "Yeah," I said. "I want a full audit trail. Every payment, every transfer, every LLC shell we used. I want documentation. Consider it done." I hung up the phone and stared out the window at the drizzle. The neighbor's garden was soaked, the tomato plants drooping under the weight of water. I thought about my grandmother, Helen Carver, who used to live in Spokane before she passed. She was the only one in the family who ever believed in me, the only one who told me to follow my gut even when it didn't make sense to anyone else. She used to say, "People will only see in you what they're capable of seeing in themselves. Don't shrink to fit their vision." She'd left me a small inheritance when she died. $5,000 and a silver locket with her initials engraved on the back. Vanessa had been furious, convinced she deserved it more because she was the youngest and Helen's favorite, or so she claimed. But Helen had been clear. The money and the locket went to me. I still wore that locket every day, tucked under my shirts, where no one could see it. I reached up and touched it now, the metal cool against my skin. My phone rang again. It was Ethan. I answered. "Hey," I said. "Hey yourself," he replied. "I'm driving up to Seattle today. Thought maybe we could grab lunch." I hesitated. "Today's not great." "All the more reason," he said gently. "I'll meet you at that place near Pike Place, the one with the good chowder. 1 o'clock. I smiled despite myself. "Okay, see you then." I met Ethan at the small seafood place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop near the market. The smell of fresh bread and salt water hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of rain-soaked pavement. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming bowls of clam chowder waiting. He stood when he saw me, and without saying anything, pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than usual. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I felt my shoulders drop. We sat down, and he pushed one of the bowls toward me. "You look tired," he said. Not as an accusation, just as a fact. "I am tired," I admitted.
I broke off a piece of sourdough and dipped it into the thick white soup. Yesterday was rough. He waited, not pushing, just present. That's what I appreciated most about Ethan. He never demanded explanations. He just made space for them. I told him about the family meeting, about the job listing, about being called a burden and an embarrassment, about walking into the rain with their voices still echoing in my head. He listened without interrupting, his eyes steady on mine. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "Do they know?" he asked. "About the money, about any of it?" I shook my head. "Not a clue. They think I'm barely surviving." He ran a hand through his hair, which was longer than the last time I had seen him, curling slightly at the edges. "That's a hell of a secret to carry." "It wasn't supposed to be a secret," I said quietly. "It just became one, because telling them would have meant dealing with their questions, their judgment, their attempts to control what I did with my money." Ethan nodded. "So what now?" I wiped my mouth with a napkin and set it down carefully. "Now, I stopped protecting them from the truth. I called Derek this morning. He's pulling all payments I've made on their behalf. All of it." Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's going to cause some noise." "Let it," I said. "I'm done being invisible while they pretend I don't contribute." He reached across the table and rested his hand on mine. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's going to hurt, but it's right." We finished lunch talking about lighter things. His next video project in the San Juan Islands, a new camera lens he was testing.
The way the light hit the water differently depending on the tide, it felt good to talk about something other than my family, to remember that there was a whole world beyond their dining room and their opinions. When we left the restaurant, the drizzle had stopped and a weak sun was trying to break through the clouds. We walked along the market, weaving between tourists and street performers. Ethan bought a small bundle of dahlias from a flower vendor and handed them to me without ceremony. "These made me think of you," he said. I took them, the petals soft and deep red against my palm. "Thank you." We stopped near the bronze pig statue where a group of kids were climbing on it, shrieking with laughter. Ethan turned to me, his expression more serious now. "Kira, there's something I need to tell you." My chest tightened slightly. "Okay." "My mom," he said. "She knows your Aunt Claudia. They went to college together. Still talk every few months." I felt my stomach drop. "What?" He nodded, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't know until recently. My mom mentioned your family by name at dinner a few weeks ago. Talked about how Claudia's niece was wasting her life making videos online. I didn't connect it at first because she used your full name, Kira Diane. But then she mentioned Mercer Island, and it clicked." I stared at him, trying to process. "Your mother knows my aunt?" He nodded again. "And I didn't tell you right away because I didn't know how. I didn't want you to think I had some ulterior motive for being around you." I pulled my hand back, holding the flowers against my chest like a shield. "This whole time." "No," he said quickly. "I only found out a few weeks ago. I swear, before that I had no idea our families were connected. And honestly, I don't care about their connection. I care about you." I looked away, watching the kids slide down the pig's back. My mind was racing. If his mother knew Claudia, that meant anything I told Ethan could potentially make its way back to my family. It meant there was a line between my old life and my new one that I hadn't seen. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Kira, I'm not them. I'm not going to run back and report to my mom or your aunt or anyone else. But I thought you should know so there are no surprises." I met his eyes. They were clear, honest, worried. I took a breath. "If you're going to be part of my life," I said slowly, "then I need to know you're on my side. Not your mom's, not my aunt's. Mine." "Without question," he said, "I'm on your side." "Prove it." He pulled out his phone, right there, scrolled through his contacts and, without hesitation, deleted his mother's number. Then he went to his messaging app and did the same with Claudia's contact information that had apparently been shared with him at some point. He held the screen up so I could see. "Done," he said. "No ties, no back doors, just us." I felt something loosen in my chest. "Okay," I said. "Okay."
We started walking again, slower this time, the flowers still clutched in my hand. I'm scared, I admitted, of what happens next, of what they'll do when the money stops, of them finding out the truth and twisting it into something ugly. He didn't try to reassure me with empty platitudes. He just said, "Then we'll deal with it when it comes, but you don't have to deal with it alone." That night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and opened an old external hard drive I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled Projects Archive, but inside was something else entirely, a folder titled Family Records. I'd started keeping it 3 years ago, not with any grand plan, just as a way to track what I was paying and why. It had grown into something more detailed than I intended. Spreadsheets showing every anonymous payment, screenshots of bank transfers, copies of invoices I'd covered, email chains with vendors who thought they were being paid by my father's company when it was actually my LLC. I opened a document dated 2 years prior. It was a saved email thread between Tyler and a loan officer at a credit union. Tyler had been rejected for a consolidation loan to cover his student loan debt. The officer had cited insufficient credit history and income instability. 3 days later, a payment had arrived in Tyler's student loan account from something called Crestwood Education Fund. Tyler had posted about it on social media, thanking God and hard work for the miracle. I'd sent that payment, $15,000 to keep him from defaulting. I scrolled further. Another folder. This one contained receipts for the Mercer Island house, property tax payments, HOA fees, a major roof repair from last winter, all paid through an LLC called Bayline Holdings, which my father believed was an investment group he'd secured a partnership with. In reality, Bayline Holdings was me. Just me. A business registration and a checking account. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just a few favors. This was systematic. I'd been holding up their entire lives while they patted themselves on the back for their successes. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. All payments suspended as of end of business today. Documents compiled and saved to secure server. You'll have access by tonight. I replied with a simple, "Thank you," then set the phone down. It was done. The safety net I'd been holding under them for years was gone. Now we'd see what they were really made of. I didn't have to wait long. The first message came 2 days later. It was from my father, short and clipped. "Kira, there's been some kind of banking error. The mortgage payment didn't process. Can you look into this?" I stared at the text. He thought I could look into it, as if I had some magic ability to see into his finances. I didn't respond. An hour later, Vanessa called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was tight with irritation when I played it back. "Kira, the Floors for my anniversary party sent a really weird email saying the deposit bounced. I thought Dad set up autopay for this. Can you call him and figure it out? I'm in the middle of planning and I don't have time for this right now." I deleted the voicemail. Then Tyler texted, "Yo, my student loan account is showing a missed payment. I thought that fund was handling it. Do you know anything about this?" I turned my phone face down and opened my laptop. My channel dashboard showed steady growth.
A new video I'd posted about transforming a dated kitchen with peel and stick tile had already hit 500,000 views in 36 hours. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. People sharing their own budget renovation wins, tagging friends, asking where I got specific materials. I clicked over to my business email, 3 new sponsorship offers, one from a major paint brand offering $40,000 for a dedicated video, another from a furniture company wanting to send me an entire bedroom set to feature, the third from a streaming service wanting me to create content around their new home improvement show. I replied to all 3 with interest, copying Derek so he could negotiate terms. This was my real life, not the chaos happening in my family's text threads, not their assumed failures. This, the work I'd built, the community I'd created, the value I'd generated entirely on my own. That evening, I got a call from my mother. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should hear this one. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Kira," she said, and I could hear the strain underneath her usual composure. "We need to talk about some financial issues that have come up." "I'm listening." "There have been some payments that didn't go through.
Your father is looking into it, but it's causing some stress. I thought maybe you might know something, since you've been so resourceful in the past." "Resourceful?" I repeated. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "Well, you've always been good at figuring things out, finding solutions. I thought maybe you'd come across some information." I closed my eyes. She was fishing, trying to see if I knew anything without directly asking if I'd been involved. "Mom," I said carefully, "I don't have access to Dad's accounts. I don't know anything about his business dealings. If there's a banking error, he should contact the bank." There was a pause. "Of course," she said, her tone cooling. "I just thought I'd check. How are you doing otherwise?" "Fine," I said, "busy with work." She made a small sound that might have been agreement or dismissal. "Well, we should get together soon. It's been a while." "Sure," I said, knowing it wouldn't happen. "I'll let you know when I have time." After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment. Outside, the streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over the city. My neighbor's wind chimes clinked softly in the breeze. I thought about my grandmother again, about the way she used to sit on her porch in Spokane with a cup of tea, watching the sun go down. She had told me once that the hardest part of growing up wasn't learning who you were, but unlearning who people told you to be. I hadn't understood it then. I was 19 and thought I had everything figured out. But sitting there now, I understood perfectly. I opened my laptop again and navigated to the secure server Derek had set up. The folder was labeled KD Financial Records. Inside were subfolders for each family member. I clicked on Tyler's. The spreadsheet loaded, showing every payment I'd made on his behalf over the past 3 years. $73,000 in total. Student loans, rent assistance during his first year of law school, a laptop when his died during finals, bar exam prep courses, every single expense documented with dates and amounts. I opened Vanessa's folder. $62,000. Venue booth, dress alterations, honeymoon flights she claimed were a gift from Dad, monthly payments to her car loan when her part-time retail job wasn't enough. Gordon's folder was the largest. $214,000. Mortgage payments, property taxes, business loan interest when his commercial properties weren't generating rent, a roof repair, new HVAC system, even the premium cable package he refused to downgrade. I'd covered it all. And Diane's folder, smaller but no less significant, $38,000. Medical bills from a procedure last year that insurance only partially covered, her book club membership fees, spa treatments she'd charged to a card she thought was connected to Dan's account, but was actually routed through one of my LLCs. I sat back and looked at the total, $387,000. Over 3 years. That didn't count the smaller cash gifts, the dinners I'd paid for when we occasionally met up, the birthday presents I'd sent. I'd built them a foundation they didn't know existed, and now I'd removed it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. "Thinking about you. Want company tonight?" I smiled and typed back. "Yes, bring takeout." On my way. When he arrived an hour later with Thai food and a 6-pack of local cider, I'd cleaned up the apartment and changed into comfortable clothes. We spread the food out on my small coffee table and ate on the floor, backs against the couch. He didn't ask about my family right away. We talked about his trip to the San Juans, the abandoned lighthouse he'd filmed, the couple who ran a tiny off-grid farm and let him stay in their guest yurt. His eyes lit up when he talked about the work, and I remembered why I'd fallen for him in the first place. He loved what he did without needing it to prove anything. Eventually, the conversation circled back. "So," he said, pulling a spring roll apart with his chopsticks, "how bad is it?" I told him about the texts, the voicemail, my mother's phone call. He listened, chewing thoughtfully. "They're going to figure it out eventually, that you were behind it." "Maybe," I said, "or maybe they'll just think they got unlucky, that their investments tanked or their credit finally caught up with them. People believe what's easiest, and it's easier to believe they failed on their own than to consider I was holding them up." He shook his head slowly. "That's bleak. It's honest." He set his food down and turned to face me fully. "What do you want to happen, Kira? Not what you think should happen or what's fair. What do you actually want?" I thought about it. "I want them to see me," I said finally. "Not as a failure or a burden or an embarrassment, just as someone who exists and has value. But I don't think they can, and I don't think I can keep waiting for them to try." "So what's the alternative?" "The alternative is I keep building my life without them in it. I let them collapse or recover on their own, and I stop measuring my worth by whether they notice." He reached over and took my hand. "That sounds lonely." "It does," I agreed. "But maybe it's less lonely than being surrounded by people who can't see you." We finished eating in comfortable quiet, the kind that didn't need filling. Later, after he had left and I was getting ready for bed, I checked my phone one last time. There was an email in my personal inbox from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Do you remember me?" I opened it cautiously. The message was short. "Hi, Kira. This is Pauline Griffin. I was your grandmother Helen's neighbor in Spokane. I came across some old letters she'd written but never sent. I think they were meant for you. Would you like me to mail them?" My heart squeezed. I typed back immediately. "Yes, please. I'll send you my address."
Thank you for reaching out. I hit send and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen. Letters from my grandmother. Words she'd written but never shared. I didn't know what they'd say, but I knew I needed to read them. Maybe they'd have answers. Or maybe they'd just remind me that someone once saw me clearly, and that was enough to keep going. I fell asleep that night with my hand resting on the locket around my neck, the metal warm now from my skin, and dreamed of rain and flowers and voices I couldn't quite make out, but somehow understood. The letters arrived on a Thursday afternoon in a padded yellow envelope with Spokane postmarks smudged across the top. I'd been editing footage in my small studio space when the buzzer rang, and I almost didn't answer it, too deep in the flow of cutting together a bathroom renovation timeline. But something made me get up, walk down the narrow staircase, and sign for the package. Back upstairs, I set it on my desk and just stared at it for a long moment before carefully peeling open the seal. Inside were 6 letters, each in its own smaller envelope, all addressed to me in my grandmother's slanted handwriting. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges, and I could smell the faint scent of her lavender drawer sachets. My hands shook as I arranged them by date, the earliest one written 4 years before she died, the most recent dated just 2 weeks before her passing. I picked up the first one and slid my finger under the flap. "My dear Kira," it began. "I'm writing this on a Sunday afternoon while the rain taps against my window, and I'm thinking about all the things I should have said to you more clearly. You called last week to tell me about your channel reaching 50,000 subscribers, and the joy in your voice made my whole day brighter. But I heard something else underneath it too. The way you hesitated when I asked if your parents were proud, the quick subject change, the lightness you forced into your laugh. I know that sound, sweetheart. It's the sound of someone trying to convince themselves they don't need approval they've already been denied." I had to stop reading and press my palm against my chest. She'd heard it. Even over the phone, even when I thought I was hiding it well, she'd known. I continued. "I want you to understand something that took me far too long to learn. Your mother, my daughter, grew up in a different time with different pressures. She learned to value appearance over substance, security over passion. It wasn't entirely her fault. I contributed to that by marrying your grandfather, a man who measured worth in bank statements and property deeds. By the time I understood the damage that perspective causes, Diane was already formed by it. She passed it to your father, and together they're passing it to your siblings. But you, Kira, you've always been different. You see value where others see risk. You build where others wait for permission. Don't let them dim that light just because they're afraid of how bright it might become." The letter went on for 2 more pages, talking about her own abandoned dreams of opening a pottery studio, her regrets about conforming to expectations, her pride in watching me choose a different path. I set it down carefully and picked up the second one, dated a year later. This one was shorter but more direct. "I need to tell you about the money," it started. "When I'm gone, there will be some confusion about my estate. Claudia will make noise about fairness and tradition. Vanessa will pout. Your parents will have opinions about who deserves what. Ignore all of it. The money I'm leaving you isn't much by their standards, but it's deliberate. You're the only one who will use it to build something rather than maintain an image. There's also a locket, silver with my initials. I've worn it for 60 years. It belonged to my mother before me. Inside is a photo of you at 8 years old, the day we spent at the lake, and you told me you wanted to make beautiful things when you grew up. You were so certain even then. Wear it and remember that certainty when others try to convince you you're lost.
I reached up and touched the locket at my throat, the one I'd been wearing every day since she died. I'd never opened it. I'd been too afraid of the grief that might spill out. But now I carefully unclasped it and used my thumbnail to pop the tiny hinge. Inside, exactly as she described, was a miniature photo of me as a child, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a painted rock like it was treasure. On the other side of the locket was a photo of her, younger than I'd ever known her, looking directly at the camera with the same determined expression I sometimes caught in my own mirror. I closed the locket and moved to the third letter. This one was different in tone, more worried. Kira, I'm concerned about the distance growing between you and your family. Your mother mentioned you haven't been to Sunday dinners in months. Tyler said something dismissive about your work at Thanksgiving. I know it hurts. I know you're protecting yourself, but I want you to consider something. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people who don't understand you is to succeed so thoroughly that they have no choice but to acknowledge it. Not for their approval, but for your own peace. Show them what they couldn't see. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. I read that paragraph 3 times. Show them what they couldn't see. That's exactly what I'd been doing, except I'd been doing it invisibly, paying their bills and covering their shortfalls while letting them believe I was barely scraping by. I'd succeeded thoroughly, but I'd hidden the evidence. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe silence hadn't been protection at all, just a different kind of disappearing. The fourth letter was brief, almost a note. Save records of everything, it said. In families like ours, memory is selective and history gets rewritten. If you ever need to defend yourself or your choices, documentation is the only truth that can't be argued with. I thought of the folders on my secure server, the spreadsheets and screenshots and bank transfers. I hadn't kept them because of her advice, since I'd started collecting them before she wrote this letter, but it felt like confirmation that my instinct had been right. The fifth letter shifted into storytelling. She wrote about her own sister, my great-aunt Margaret, who'd been an artist in the 1960s. Margaret wanted to move to San Francisco and join a collective of painters, but the family had pressured her to stay in Spokane, marry a local banker, settle down.
She'd complied, and Helen had watched her sister slowly fade over the decades, her canvases gathering dust in a basement, her hands eventually forgetting how to hold a brush. Don't become Margaret, my grandmother wrote. Don't let their fear of the unfamiliar turn you into someone you're not. If they can't celebrate your path, walk it anyway. Walk it louder. The last letter was dated 2 weeks before she died. Her handwriting was shakier here, the lines less straight. My darling Kira, I don't have much time left and I can feel it in my bones. There's so much I wish I could stay to see. Your channel growing, your confidence solidifying, the moment when you finally stop asking for permission to take up space. But since I won't be there, I'm writing this as a benediction of sorts. You are enough, exactly as you are. Your worth isn't determined by their acknowledgement. Your success isn't validated by their pride. You're building a life that matters, creating work that helps people, forging a path that's entirely your own. That's rare and precious. Guard it fiercely. And when the time comes that you have to choose between their comfort and your truth, choose truth every single time. It will hurt. It will feel like betrayal. But choosing their comfort over your truth is a betrayal of yourself, and that wound never heals. I love you beyond measure. Make beautiful things. Live loudly. Take up all the space you need. Grandma Helen. I sat there at my desk with tears running down my face, not bothering to wipe them away. She'd known. She'd seen exactly what was happening and what would continue to happen, and she tried to arm me with words to carry forward. I carefully folded each letter back into its envelope and placed them in my desk drawer, right next to the external hard drive with all my family financial records. Evidence and encouragement, side by side. That weekend, I threw myself into work. I filmed 3 videos back-to-back, each one focused on accessible home improvements using materials from discount stores. I wanted the content to be useful, something someone with a limited budget could actually replicate.
Between takes, I answered emails, reviewed contracts Derek had sent over, and planned out my content calendar for the next month. Staying busy kept my mind from spiraling into the growing silence from my family. But Monday morning, the silence broke. I woke up to 17 missed calls, 12 from my mother, 3 from Tyler, 2 from Vanessa. There were also multiple texts, increasingly frantic. Call me immediately, this is urgent. Kira, answer your phone, we have a serious problem. My stomach nodded, but I forced myself to make coffee before listening to any of the voicemails. I needed to be calm for whatever was coming. The first voicemail was my mother, her voice high and strained. Kira, your father's business account has been frozen. The bank is saying there are irregularities with some of the payments that have been coming in. We need you to call us back right now. This is a family emergency. The next one was Tyler, angry rather than worried. Kira, what the hell is going on? My loan servicer says the Crestwood Fund doesn't exist, and they're demanding back payment on everything that was supposedly covered. Did you know about this? Call me. Vanessa's voicemail was teary and accusatory. My wedding planner just told me all my vendor payments are bouncing, and now I'm at risk of losing my anniversary venue, and I don't understand what happened. Mom says you might know something. Please call. This isn't fair. I deleted all the voicemails and sat down with my coffee, staring out the window at the gray Seattle morning. So, it was happening faster than I'd anticipated. The payments I'd stopped had created a domino effect, and now they were scrambling to understand why everything was falling apart at once. My phone rang again. My father this time. I answered. Kira? He said, no greeting, no pleasantries. We need you to come to the house today. There's a financial situation that requires the whole family. I took a sip of coffee, letting him wait. What kind of situation? Someone has been making payments on our accounts under false identities. The bank is investigating possible fraud. We need to figure out who had access to our information. I could hear the controlled panic underneath his authoritative tone. He wasn't used to things being out of his control. That sounds serious, I said evenly. Have you contacted the police? We're trying to handle it internally first, he said, but we need everyone present. Can you be here by noon? I looked at the clock. It was 9:30. I have a call with a sponsor at noon, I said. Can we do later this week? Kira, he snapped, this is more important than your YouTube hobby. His words hung in the air between us. Your YouTube hobby. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Actually, Dad, my YouTube work is extremely important. It's how I make my living. But I can move some things around. How about 3 o'clock? Fine, he said tersely. 3 o'clock, don't be late. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there for a moment, then called Derek. We need to talk before I go to my parents' house this afternoon, I said when he answered. They're figuring out the payments stopped and they're panicking. Derek's response was calm and measured. Do you want me there with you? No, I said, but I need you to send me a clean summary document, something that shows every payment I made, every LLC involved, every date and amount. I want it printed and bound. He was quiet for a beat. You're going to tell them? I'm going to show them, I said. There's a difference. He understood immediately. I'll have it ready in an hour. Where should I meet you? There's a coffee shop on Mercer Island, 2 blocks from their house. I'll text you the address. I spent the next 2 hours getting ready with deliberate care. I wore dark jeans and a charcoal sweater, simple but put together. I left my hair down and put on the locket. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw my grandmother's determination looking back at me. You are enough, I whispered to my reflection. Choose truth.
Derek met me at the coffee shop at 2:30. He handed me a navy folder with a clear cover. Inside was a 40-page document, professionally formatted, showing every financial transaction I'd made on my family's behalf. It was organized by family member, with subsections for category of expense and a final page showing the grand total. $387,000 over 3 years. It was undeniable and irrefutable. This is thorough, I said, flipping through it. Derek nodded. If they try to claim fraud, this shows clear intent to help. If they try to claim you were hiding something, it shows meticulous record keeping. You're covered legally. What about morally? I asked, looking up at him. He gave me a sad smile. Morally, you've been more than generous. What happens now is on them. I arrived at the house at exactly 3 o'clock. The sky had darkened and rain was starting to fall again. Light, but steady. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the water beat on the windshield, gathering my courage. Then I grabbed the folder, got out, and walked to the front door. My mother opened it before I could knock, her face drawn and anxious. "Thank God you're here," she said, ushering me in quickly. "Your father is in his office with Tyler. Vanessa's in the living room. Go ahead and wait there. I'll get them." The living room looked exactly as it always had. Cream-colored furniture, tasteful art on the walls, fresh flowers on the side table that my mother replaced weekly. Vanessa was curled up on the couch with her phone, but she set it down when I walked in. Her eyes were red from crying. "Kira," she said, her voice small, "this is really bad. The vendors are threatening to sue me. I don't know what to do." I sat down in the chair across from her, the folder in my lap. "It's going to be okay," I said quietly. "Just wait until everyone gets here." Tyler walked in first, followed by my father and then my mother. Tyler looked furious, my father looked stern, and my mother looked terrified. They all sat down, forming a semicircle around me. Gordon folded his hands and leaned forward. "Kira, we've spent the morning trying to untangle this mess. It appears that someone created multiple fraudulent accounts using our information and has been making payments that recently stopped. The bank says it's possible identity theft. We need to know if you've noticed anything suspicious or if anyone has asked you questions about our family finances." I looked at each of them in turn. Tyler with his arms crossed defensively, Vanessa with her lip trembling, my mother wringing her hands, my father with that expression he wore when he was about to solve a problem through sheer force of will. Then I opened the folder and set it on the coffee table between us. "It wasn't identity theft," I said calmly. "It was me." The room went completely silent. "What?" my mother whispered. "I made every single one of those payments," I said. "The mortgage on this house, Tyler's student loans, Vanessa's wedding expenses, Dad's business account shortfalls, all of it, for 3 years. This document shows every transaction, every date, every amount." Tyler leaned forward and grabbed the folder, flipping through it rapidly. His face went from confused to shocked to angry in the span of seconds. "This says you paid $73,000 for my loans. That's insane. You don't have this kind of money." "But I do," I said. "My channel generates approximately $2 million a month in revenue. After expenses and taxes, I net about $1.4 million. I've been doing this for 3 years." "You've been making $2 million a month?" Vanessa said, her voice rising to a near shriek. "From YouTube?" My father stood up abruptly. "That's impossible. No one makes that kind of money from making videos." I pulled out my phone, opened my business banking app, and turned the screen toward him. The account balance showed $1.8 million in available funds. "This is one account," I said. "I have 4 others for different revenue streams." He stared at the screen like it was written in a foreign language. My mother reached for the folder, her hands shaking as she turned pages. "Why?" she breathed. "Why would you do this and not tell us?" "Because you thought I was failing," I said. "You called my work a hobby, an embarrassment. You told me to get a real job. And while you were saying those things, I was keeping you afloat. I was paying your mortgage so you wouldn't lose this house. I was covering Tyler's debt so he could graduate without defaulting. I was funding Vanessa's fantasy wedding so she wouldn't have a meltdown. I did it because, despite everything, you're my family. But I didn't tell you because I knew you'd find a way to make it about yourselves, to control it, to take credit or demand explanations, or treat it like I owed you something." Gordon sat back down heavily. "This is a lot to process. If what you're saying is true, and I'm still not entirely convinced it is, then we need to discuss how to move forward, how to structure this properly." I shook my head. "There's nothing to structure, Dad. I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not your silent benefactor. You're all going to have to figure out your finances on your own, the way I figured out mine." "But we can't," my mother said desperately. "The mortgage payment is due next week. Your father's business account is overdrawn. Vanessa's vendors are threatening legal action. Tyler's loans are going into default status. What are we supposed to do?"
What you should have been doing all along, I said, standing up. Budget, prioritize, make hard choices, downsize if you need to, sell things, ask for help from people who actually know you need it, live within your means. Tyler stood up too, his face flushed. This is unbelievable. You're really going to just cut us off after playing secret benefactor for 3 years? That's cold, even for you. I picked up the folder from the table. I gave you $387,000 of my own money, Tyler. Money I earned through work you mocked. I did it quietly because I didn't want praise or control. I just wanted to help. But helping people who don't respect you isn't kindness. It's self-betrayal. And I'm done betraying myself to make you comfortable. I walked toward the door. My mother followed me. Kira, please, we can talk about this. We can figure something out. Can we? I asked, turning to face her. Can you actually see me now, Mom? Or are you just seeing the money? Her face crumpled, and I felt a pang of guilt, but I didn't let it stop me. I love you, I said quietly.
All of you. But I can't keep disappearing so you can feel secure. I left before anyone could respond, walking out into the rain that had grown heavier. I got in my car and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel, adrenaline flooding my system. My phone was already buzzing with texts, but I didn't look at them. I just started the engine and drove away from the house on Mercer Island, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. I drove straight to Ethan's apartment in Fremont without calling ahead. The rain was coming down hard now, turning the street slick and reflective under the streetlights. When I knocked on his door, he opened it immediately, taking one look at my soaked hair and shaking hands before pulling me inside. He wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and guided me to his couch. Without asking what happened, he just sat beside me and waited. I told them, I said finally, everything. About the money, about the payments, all of it. He nodded slowly. How did they take it? About how you'd expect. Shock, then anger, then desperation. My brother called me manipulative. My sister cried about her party. My dad wanted to discuss structuring going forward, like I was proposing a business arrangement. My mom asked how we could figure something out, but I could tell she meant how I could keep paying. Ethan pulled the blanket tighter around me. Are you okay? I don't know yet, I admitted. I feel like I just jumped off something really high and I'm still falling. Ask me again when I land. He made tea while I sat there, trying to stop my hands from shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off and exhaustion was rushing in to fill the space. When he came back with 2 steaming mugs, he sat closer this time, his shoulder touching mine. What do you need right now? He asked. I thought about it. To know I did the right thing, I said, even if it feels terrible. You did, he said without hesitation. They needed to know the truth. What they do with it now is their choice, not your responsibility. We sat in silence for a while, drinking tea and listening to the rain hammer against the windows. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket, but I ignored it. Eventually, Ethan said, "Stay here tonight. You shouldn't be alone." I nodded gratefully. I woke up the next morning on Ethan's couch, still wrapped in the blanket, sunlight streaming through the windows. The storm had passed, and the sky was that brilliant, clear blue that only comes after heavy rain. Ethan was in the kitchen making eggs, and the smell of coffee filled the apartment. "Morning," he said when he saw me sit up. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I said honestly. "But maybe in a necessary way?" He brought over a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. "Eat first, then check your phone. Whatever's waiting can wait 10 more minutes." He was right about that. But when I finally did look at my phone, the messages were overwhelming. 43 texts, 21 missed calls, and dozens of email notifications. Most of the texts were from my family.
My mother's messages started apologetic and grew increasingly frantic. "We need to talk about this calmly. Please come back so we can discuss options. Kira, you can't just abandon your family. This is childish." Tyler's texts were aggressive. "You're really going to destroy everything we've built just to make a point? This is selfish even by your standards. Call me back or I'm coming to find you." Vanessa's messages were mostly crying emojis and fragments of sentences about vendors and deposits and how could I do this to her. My father had sent exactly one text. We will discuss this properly when you're ready to be rational. But there were other messages too, ones I hadn't expected. 3 from people I'd worked with on channel collaborations, all saying they'd heard something was going on and offering support if I needed it. 1 from Derek saying he'd fielded several angry calls from my family and wanted to make sure I was safe. And 1 from an unknown number that just said, "This is Pauline from Spokane. Your grandmother would be proud of you." I showed that last one to Ethan. He read it and smiled. She's right, you know? I wanted to believe that, but doubt was creeping in. What if I just made everything worse? What if they never speak to me again? What if I destroyed the family over money? Ethan set down his coffee mug and looked at me seriously. Kira, you didn't destroy anything. You removed a false foundation. If your family can't stand without it, that's not your fault. That's information about what was really holding you together. His words settled something in me. I spent the rest of the morning responding to messages from friends and colleagues, ignoring the ones from my family. I wasn't ready to engage with them yet. I needed space to think, to feel, to figure out what came next. Around noon, Derek called. "I've got a situation you should know about," he said. "Your brother Tyler contacted 2 of your sponsors claiming you've been involved in fraudulent financial activity. He's trying to damage your reputation." My stomach dropped. What? He sent emails to Bright Home Furnishings and Cascade Paint Company saying you're under investigation for fraud and they should reconsider their partnerships with you. Neither company has responded to him yet, but I wanted you to know before this goes any further. Rage flooded through me, hot and sharp. He's going after my work? My actual career? That's crossing a line. Derek's voice was calm but firm. It is, and we need to respond strategically. I'm drafting a formal cease and desist. I'm also preparing a defamation case if he continues. But Kira, this is going to get ugly before it gets better. I know, I said. Do what you need to do. I'm not backing down. After hanging up, I paced Ethan's apartment, trying to contain the fury building in my chest. Tyler wasn't just angry about the money stopping. He was actively trying to destroy what I'd built. He was weaponizing my success against me because he couldn't handle the truth of where it came from. Ethan watched me pace for a few minutes before standing up and blocking my path. "Stop," he said gently. "You're spiraling. Talk to me." "He's trying to ruin my career," I said, my voice tight. "He's lying to my sponsors, trying to make them think I'm a criminal."
Colleagues who got recognition he wanted. Even our father, when Gordon made decisions Tyler disagreed with. He had a pattern of destroying what he couldn't control. I just never thought he'd turn it on me with such force. "What are you going to do?" Ethan asked. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. "I'm going to tell the truth," I said, publicly. "You're sure about that?" he asked. "Once you put it out there, you can't take it back." "I'm sure," I said. "I'm done protecting people who are actively trying to hurt me." I spent the next hour drafting a statement. Not a long rant or an emotional confession, just a clear, factual explanation. I wrote about building my channel from nothing, about the revenue it generated, about choosing to help my family anonymously, and about the decision to stop when I realized the dynamic was unhealthy. I included enough detail to be credible without sharing private financial information. I mentioned Tyler's recent actions and made it clear that any claims of fraud were false and legally actionable. Then I posted it as a community update on my channel and shared it across my social media platforms. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, I had thousands of comments. The majority were supportive, people sharing their own stories of family members who'd taken advantage of their success or dismissed their unconventional careers. Some were from other creators who'd faced similar situations. A few were negative, calling me petty or saying family issues should stay private, but they were drowned out by the wave of support. Several sponsors reached out directly to reassure me that they trusted our partnerships and weren't swayed by outside claims. Bright Home's marketing director sent a personal email saying they'd received Tyler's message and immediately deleted it as baseless slander. By evening, the post had been shared over 10,000 times. People were dissecting it, discussing it, relating to it. My subscriber count actually increased by 15,000 in a single day. But more importantly, I felt lighter. The secret I'd been carrying for 3 years was gone. The truth was out in the open, and the sky hadn't fallen. If anything, the overwhelming response showed me that hiding hadn't been protecting anyone. It had just been isolating me. Ethan ordered pizza, and we ate it while watching the comments roll in on my laptop. "Some of these are brutal," he said, reading over my shoulder. "Look at this one. Your family should be ashamed. You're a legend for not exposing them sooner." I scrolled past that comment to find others. "Here's a better one," I said. "Thank you for sharing this. My sister makes 6 figures and let my parents think I was supporting her while I struggled. Your story helped me realize I'm not alone." That's the part that matters. Ethan closed the laptop gently. "You did good today, Kira." I leaned back against the couch. I don't feel good yet, but maybe I will eventually. My phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. "Hello?" I said carefully. "Kira!" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What have you done? Everyone is calling us. Your Aunt Claudia just sent me a link to your post. People are commenting on it, saying terrible things about our family." I took a breath. "I told the truth, Mom. That's what I did. You've humiliated us," she said, and now there was anger creeping into her voice. "Do you understand what this does to your father's reputation, to Tyler's career, to Vanessa's social standing? You've made us look like leeches." "You made yourselves look like that," I said quietly. "I just stopped hiding it." There was a long silence. Then she said, "I don't know who you are anymore." "Maybe you never did," I replied. She hung up without another word. I set the phone down and felt tears prick at my eyes, but they didn't fall. Ethan pulled me against his side and I let myself lean into him, exhausted and raw, but also strangely free. The next few days were surreal. My post continued to gain traction, eventually being picked up by several online publications that wrote articles about family dynamics and financial abuse in reverse. A popular podcast reached out asking if I'd be willing to share my story in more depth. 3 different literary agents contacted me about writing a book. The attention was uncomfortable, but also validating in a way I hadn't expected. People understood. They got it. They'd lived versions of it themselves. Meanwhile, my family's silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was like they'd collectively decided to ice me out, which was almost a relief. I needed the space to process everything without their voices in my head. On Friday afternoon, I was filming a new video about refinishing old cabinet hardware when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone and briefly wondered if it was a package delivery, but when I opened the door, Vanessa was standing there. She looked smaller somehow, her usual polished appearance replaced by minimal makeup and a wrinkled sweater. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked into my apartment slowly, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. "This is nice, cozy." "Thanks," I said, not sure where this was going. "Do you want coffee or something?" She shook her head and sat down on my couch, perching on the edge like she might need to run at any moment. "I read your post, all of it. And I read the comments. Thousands of people talking about us, about me." I didn't respond, just waited. She twisted her hands in her lap. "I didn't know, Kira. I swear, I didn't know you were the one paying for everything. I thought Dad had it covered, or that I'd gotten lucky with vendor discounts, or I don't know. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to know if the answer was bad." "That's the problem, though," I said gently. "You didn't want to know. None of you did. It was easier to believe I was failing than to consider I might be succeeding in a way you didn't understand." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I called your work embarrassing. Oh God, Kira, I said that to your face and you were paying for my wedding? What kind of person does that make me?" "Human," I said.
A person who believed what was easiest to believe. She wiped at her face with her sleeve. "Tyler is furious about your post. He's talking about suing you for defamation. Dad's trying to do damage control with his business associates. Mom isn't eating. Everything's falling apart." I sat down in the chair across from her.
Vanessa, it was already falling apart. You just couldn't see the cracks because I was filling them in. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Can you forgive me? I don't know yet, I said honestly. I'm not trying to punish you, but I also can't just pretend everything's fine. You hurt me. All of you did, repeatedly. And I enabled it by hiding how well I was actually doing. We both made mistakes, but I'm done making mine. What does that mean? She asked. It means I'm not going to keep myself small to make you comfortable. I'm not going to hide my success or apologize for my choices. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be based on who I actually am, not who you assumed I was. Vanessa nodded slowly. That's fair. I don't know if I can do that yet, but it's fair. She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm really proud of you. Your channel is incredible. I've been watching your videos this week, actually watching them, and you're so talented. I had no idea. Thank you, I said. That means something. After she left, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling oddly hopeful. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was honest, and honesty was the foundation I needed if anything was going to be rebuilt. That weekend, Ethan and I drove up to the San Juan Islands for a long weekend away from everything. We stayed in a small cabin near the water, spending our days hiking coastal trails and our evenings cooking simple meals and talking about the future. On Saturday night, we sat on the cabin's deck, watching the sun set over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple. Ethan reached over and took my hand. I've been thinking about something, he said. Okay, I replied, turning to look at him. I want to collaborate with you. On content, on projects, on life. I know it's fast and maybe complicated, but watching you go through all this has made me realize how much I want to build something real with someone who understands what that means. My heart swelled. I want that too, I said. He smiled, that easy, genuine smile that had first drawn me to him. Good, because I already started planning a video series about sustainable tiny home living, and I was hoping you'd co-create it with me. I laughed, the sound surprising me with its lightness. You're already planning content? That's very on brand for you. He pulled me closer. We create beautiful things, Kira. Both of us. Imagine what we could do together. I rested my head on his shoulder and watched the last light fade from the sky. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely excited about the future. Not anxious, not defensive, just open and ready. When we got back to Seattle on Monday, there was a certified letter waiting at my apartment. It was from a law office I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal demand letter from Tyler threatening legal action if I didn't retract my public statements and issue an apology within 7 days. I read it twice, feeling that familiar angle rise up, then called Derek. I got Tyler's letter, I said. He actually went through with it. Derek sighed. I was afraid of that. Do you want me to respond, or do you want to handle this differently? What are my options? I asked. Legally, his case is weak. You stated facts and expressed your experience. That's protected. We can respond with our own letter explaining why his claims have no merit, or, and this is the nuclear option, we can countersue for harassment and abuse of process. I thought about my grandmother's letters, about her advice to choose truth over comfort every single time. I thought about Vanessa's visit and the small crack of light it had opened. I thought about the thousands of people who'd reached out to say my story had helped them. Then I thought about Tyler actively trying to silence me, to punish me for speaking up, to control a narrative he'd already lost. Let's do both, I said. Respond to his letter explaining why he has no case, and file a countersuit. I'm done being threatened into silence. Derek was quiet for a moment. You're sure? This will make things with your family even worse. They can't get much worse, I said. And if Tyler wants to make this legal, then we'll handle it legally. He has no idea what documentation I have. All right, Derek said, and I could hear the resolve in his voice. I'll draft everything today. Within a week, the countersuit was filed. The local legal community was small enough that word spread quickly. And suddenly, I wasn't just a YouTuber who'd exposed family drama. I was someone fighting back against attempts to silence her. Several other creators reached out privately, sharing their own stories of family members who tried to control or profit from their success. A women's business network invited me to speak at their next event about setting boundaries and protecting your work. The narrative was shifting from family conflict to something bigger, a conversation about worth and visibility, and refusing to be diminished. My channel continued to grow. I crossed 6 million subscribers in early November, and the comments on my videos had shifted. People weren't just talking about the projects anymore. They were sharing their own stories of family rejection, of choosing themselves, of building lives that others didn't understand. My content had become a gathering place for people who needed to hear that success didn't require permission. That same week, I got an email from a production company in Los Angeles. They'd seen my work and wanted to discuss developing a show around accessible home renovation. The offer was substantial, and more importantly, it was respectful. They wanted my vision, my voice, my expertise. Not a sanitized version, not a character I'd play, just me. I scheduled a call with them on the following Monday and spent the weekend preparing. Ethan helped me put together a pitch deck, and we talked through what I'd want from a show if I had complete creative control. It felt surreal to be having these conversations, to be watching opportunities expand just as my family relationships were contracting. But maybe that was the point. Maybe you couldn't grow into your full self while trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for your actual shape. On the morning of the call, I put on the locket my grandmother had left me and whispered a quiet thank you to her memory, then dialed in and pitched my vision with confidence I'd spent years building in secret and was finally ready to own out loud.
The executive producer, a woman named Marion, who'd worked on several successful home improvement shows, said something that stuck with me. "We're not interested in making you into someone you're not. The authenticity is what makes this work. People are tired of perfection. They want real solutions from real people." When I hung up, I sat at my desk for a long moment, just breathing, letting it sink in. This was happening. Actually happening. Ethan took me out to celebrate that night, to a small restaurant in Ballard that overlooked the water. We ordered too much food and talked about what a show might look like, what it could mean for both our channels, how we could maintain creative control while working within a larger production framework. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I almost ignored it, but something made me glance at the screen. The subject line read, "Legal Notice of Withdrawal." I opened it. It was from Tyler's attorney, a brief formal statement that my brother was withdrawing his legal complaint and would not be pursuing further action. No explanation, no apology, just a clinical announcement that he was backing down. I showed the email to Ethan. He read it and let out a low whistle. "What changed?" he asked. "I don't know," I said slowly, "but I'm guessing someone convinced him he couldn't win, or maybe the countersuit scared him. Either way, it's over." We finished dinner in lighter spirits, and when we walked back to the car, the November air was crisp and clear, the kind of cold that makes you feel awake and present. Ethan drove me home and walked me to my door. "I'm proud of you," he said, kissing my forehead, "for all of it, for standing up, for pushing forward, for not backing down." I hugged him tightly. "I couldn't have done this without you." "Sure you could have," he said, "but I'm glad you didn't have to." The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa. Can we meet for coffee? I want to talk. Really talk. No agenda." I stared at the message for a while before responding. "When and where?" She suggested a place in Capitol Hill, neutral territory for both of us. We met on a Wednesday afternoon, the coffee shop half empty and filled with soft indie music.
Vanessa was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. "I got you a latte," she said as I sat down. "I remembered you used to like them." "Thank you," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke. "Tyler dropped the lawsuit," she said. "Did you hear?" I did. "Why did he do it?" She looked down at her cup. "Because Dad told him to. Apparently, Derek sent over documentation of every payment you made, every anonymous transfer, every covered expense. Tyler's lawyer looked at it and said he had no case. More than that, he said Tyler would probably lose a countersuit badly and it would become public record. Dad didn't want that humiliation, so he made Tyler drop it." I nodded slowly. "That makes sense." Vanessa met my eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About how we didn't want to know the truth because it was easier not to. You were right. I didn't ask questions because asking would have meant facing uncomfortable answers about where the money was coming from or why things were working out so conveniently." I took a sip of my latte, letting her continue. "Mom's been a mess," Vanessa said. "She keeps saying she failed as a parent, that she should have seen what was happening. Tyler's angry at everyone, mostly himself, I think, but he won't admit it. Dad's trying to restructure everything financially, and it's not going well. They might have to sell the house." I felt a pang at that, but also a strange distance. That house had never really felt like home anyway. "I'm sorry they're struggling," I said carefully, "but I'm not responsible for fixing it." "I know," Vanessa said quickly. "I'm not asking you to. I'm just trying to give you context." She paused, then added, "I talked to my therapist about all this. About you, about our family dynamics, about how we treated you." That surprised me. "You're in therapy?" "Started 2 weeks ago," she admitted. "After everything blew up, I realized I had no idea how to process any of it. My therapist helped me see some patterns I'd been blind to, like how I always competed with you for Mom's attention, even though you never competed back, or how I resented your closeness with Grandma Helen because it felt like you had something I couldn't access." I set down my cup. "I never tried to exclude you from that, Vanessa. Grandma loved you too." "I know," she said, "but she saw you differently, and I was jealous of that instead of trying to understand why. She saw your creativity and your independence and your courage, and those were things I didn't value in myself, so I dismissed them in you." It was probably the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard my sister say. We talked for over an hour, carefully working through years of misunderstandings and resentments. She apologized for specific things, for calling my work embarrassing, for not defending me when Tyler made dismissive comments, for benefiting from my money while looking down on my choices. I apologize too, for hiding the truth in a way that made connection impossible, for enabling their dependence instead of being honest about what I was doing. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was real. It was a start. As we were leaving, Vanessa hugged me, something she hadn't done in years. "I miss you," she said quietly. "I miss having a sister." "I'm right here," I said. "I've always been right here. You just have to be willing to see me." "I know that now," she replied.
Over the next few weeks, things settled into a new kind of normal. Vanessa and I texted occasionally, brief check-ins and shared articles, nothing heavy but enough to maintain a thread. My mother called once, a short, awkward conversation where she mostly talked about the weather and asked surface-level questions about my channel. I could tell she wanted to say more but didn't know how, and I didn't push. Tyler and my father remained silent, which I took as their form of retreat. The production company moved forward with the pilot plans, and I spent December in pre-production meetings, location scouting, and building out the show's framework. Marion kept her word about maintaining my vision, and I felt excited rather than anxious about the project. Ethan and I decided to spend Christmas together, just the two of us, in a cabin near Mount Rainier. We cooked an elaborate dinner that turned out mediocre and laughed about our lack of culinary skills. We hiked through snow-covered forests and sat by the fireplace reading and planning projects for the new year. It was quiet and peaceful and exactly what I needed. On Christmas morning, I found a small wrapped box under the tiny tree we decorated with popcorn strings and paper ornaments. Inside was a silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny house with a heart-shaped door.
Ethan watched me open it with a nervous smile. "It's cheesy, I know," he said. "But I wanted you to have something that represents what you build. Not just physical houses, but homes. Places where people feel safe and seen." I put it on immediately, the metal cool against my wrist. "It's perfect," I said, meaning it completely. We spent the rest of the day in comfortable quiet. The kind of togetherness that doesn't require performance or explanation. When we returned to Seattle after New Year's, I felt reset and ready. The pilot episode was scheduled to shoot in late January, and my channel was thriving with nearly 7 million subscribers. I'd also started working on the book that several agents had approached me about, a memoir mixed with practical advice about building creative careers and setting boundaries. Writing it was harder than I'd expected, requiring me to revisit painful memories and examine my own complicity in unhealthy patterns. But it also felt necessary, like documentation of a journey I needed to complete. In mid-January, I got an unexpected email from my father. The subject line was simply, "Kira." I opened it hesitantly. The message was formal and stiff, so characteristically Gordon that I almost smiled. "Kira, I've spent the past 2 months reviewing our family's financial situation and the documentation your lawyer provided. I want you to know that I understand now the extent of what you did for us. I don't know how to properly express my gratitude or my regret for how we treated you during that time. Your mother and I are working with a financial advisor to stabilize our situation. We will likely need to downsize from the Mercer Island property, which is difficult but manageable. Tyler has taken a position at a firm in Portland and is moving next month. Vanessa is doing well. I believe you've been in contact with her." The email continued. "I'm writing because I want to apologize, though I recognize that words feel inadequate given the circumstances. We failed to see you clearly, and in doing so, we diminish both your accomplishments and your generosity. You built something remarkable while we were too busy judging the scaffolding to notice the structure. I'm proud of you, Kira. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I don't expect this to repair our relationship immediately, but I hope it's a starting point. If you're willing, I would like to have lunch sometime. No agenda, no negotiations, just a father trying to actually know his daughter. Respectfully, Dad." I read the email 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. Anger at how long it took, sadness at what we'd lost, relief that he'd finally said something real, uncertainty about whether it was genuine or strategic. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I saved the email and went for a walk around my neighborhood, letting my thoughts settle. When I got back, I called Derek. "My dad reached out," I said. "He apologized and wants to have lunch. What do you think?" Derek was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" he asked back. "Do you want to see him?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me does. Part of me thinks it's too little too late." "Both things can be true," Derek said. "You can be open to connection while also protecting yourself. Just because he apologized doesn't mean you owe him immediate forgiveness or access." That helped clarify things. I wrote back to my father later that day, a brief response saying I appreciated his email and would consider lunch, but I needed more time. He replied within an hour saying he understood and would wait until I was ready. It felt like the first honest exchange we'd had in years. The pilot shoot happened in early February at a small house in Tacoma that needed major updates on a tight budget. The production crew was professional and efficient, and Marion had kept the team small so it didn't feel overwhelming. We filmed for 3 days, and by the end, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Watching the rough footage later, I barely recognized myself on screen. I looked confident, capable, genuinely happy. I looked like someone who knew exactly what she was doing and why it mattered. The network loved it. Within 2 weeks, they'd greenlit a full season, 10 episodes, shooting throughout the spring and summer.
The contract they offered was generous, with creative approval clauses that protected my vision, and Derek negotiated additional terms that ensured I maintained ownership of my personal brand. When I signed the paperwork, I thought about all the times my family had suggested I get a real job, all the times I doubted myself in secret, all the years I'd hidden my success because I didn't trust them to handle it with care. None of that mattered anymore. I'd built this despite them, and now it was undeniably real. In March, Vanessa invited me to a small dinner party at her apartment. "Just a few friends," she said. "Casual." I almost declined, wary of walking into an ambush or emotional manipulation. But something in her voice sounded genuine, so I agreed. When I arrived, it was exactly what she'd described. 4 other people, all around our age, sitting around her dining table with wine and homemade pasta. Vanessa introduced me simply as her sister Kira. No qualifiers or explanations. We talked about normal things, travel and books and the city's restaurant scene. Nobody brought up my channel or the family drama or anything heavy. It was surprisingly pleasant. After dinner, while the others were arguing about which movie to watch, Vanessa pulled me aside into her kitchen. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," I admitted. She smiled, a real smile, without agenda behind it. "I'm trying to build something different with you. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I want to try." "Me too," I said, and I meant it. April brought the book deadline, and I spent long days writing and revising, trying to capture both the practical lessons and the emotional truth of my experience. My editor, a sharp woman named Ruth, who'd worked with several successful memoirists, pushed me to go deeper in places I wanted to gloss over. The chapters about my grandmother made me cry while writing them. The sections about financial documentation felt tedious, but necessary. The final chapters about choosing myself over family comfort were the hardest, requiring me to own decisions I still sometimes questioned. When I finally sent the completed manuscript to Ruth in early May, I felt like I'd run a marathon. Ethan took me away for a weekend to the Oregon coast to decompress. We stayed in a tiny rental right on the beach and spent hours walking along the shoreline collecting shells and talking about nothing important. On our last evening there, as we watched the sun sink into the ocean, Ethan said something that caught me off guard. "I love you, you know." I looked at him, his face gilded in orange light, his expression open and certain. "I love you too," I said, and realized I'd been feeling it for months but hadn't found the moment to say it. He reached over and took my hand. "I want to build a life with you, not just content, not just projects, an actual life." "What does that look like?" I asked, curious rather than scared. He shrugged. "I don't know exactly. Maybe we get a place together. Maybe we keep our separate spaces but spend most nights in the same one. Maybe we buy some land and build something from scratch. I'm flexible on the details. I just know I want you in my future in a way that's permanent and intentional." I squeezed his hand. "I want that too." We sat there as the light faded and the air grew cold, making plans and dreaming out loud, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely free to imagine a future that was entirely my own design. The show premiered in June to strong ratings and positive reviews. Critics praised the accessibility of the projects and the authenticity of the approach. My channel exploded past 10 million subscribers in the week following the premiere. Sponsorship offers flooded in, more than I could possibly accept, and Derek helped me sort through them to find partnerships that aligned with my values. The book was scheduled for release in September, and the publisher was already talking about a promotional tour. Everything was moving fast, almost too fast, but I felt steady in a way I never had before. In July, I finally agreed to have lunch with my father. We met at a small bistro downtown, neutral territory with good lighting and reasonable noise levels. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before. We ordered food and made awkward small talk about the weather and traffic. Then, after the server brought our meals, Gordon set down his fork and looked me directly. "I've been going to therapy," he said. "Your mother insisted after everything happened. I resisted at first, but she was right. I needed it." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. "My therapist has helped me understand some things about how I was raised and what I passed on to you and your siblings. The emphasis on appearance over substance, the belief that worth is measured in traditional metrics, the inability to see value in paths I didn't understand. I did damage. To you, especially, because you were the one who diverged most clearly from the path I thought was correct. I'm sorry for that." His voice cracked slightly on the last sentence, and I saw his eyes were damp. I'd never seen my father cry, not once in my entire life. It made him suddenly human in a way he'd never been before. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it matters." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness or for things to go back to how they were. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you've built and how remarkable it is. I see the person you've become despite us, maybe because of us in ways I don't fully understand yet."
I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to be able to say that. We finished lunch talking more easily about the show and his plans to start consulting instead of trying to rebuild his commercial real estate portfolio.
about my mother's new hobby painting classes, something she'd apparently always wanted to try, about Tyler's move to Portland and how the distance seemed to be good for him. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was honest. It was more than I'd expected. As we were leaving, Gordon paused on the sidewalk. "Can I hug you?" he asked, awkward and uncertain. I nodded, and he pulled me into a brief embrace that felt unfamiliar but not unwelcome. "Take care of yourself, Kira," he said. "You don't need us, but we'd like to be part of your life if you'll allow it. On your terms." "I will," I said. "Just give me time." "Time I can do," he replied, and I believed him. By August, my life had settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable. I was filming for the show 2 weeks out of every month, running my channel on a consistent schedule, working on book edits, and spending real quality time with Ethan. We decided to look for a house together, something we could renovate as a joint project. The search was fun, walking through spaces and imagining what they could become, debating paint colors and layout changes, dreaming in blueprint form. Vanessa and I had lunch once a month now, an unspoken agreement to maintain connection without forcing intensity. My mother called occasionally, short conversations that felt more genuine as she learned to ask real questions instead of making assumptions. Tyler had reached out once via email, a brief note saying he was working on himself and hoped we could eventually talk. I'd responded saying I appreciated that and to reach out when he was ready. It wasn't full family healing, but it was something. It was more honest than anything we'd had before. The book released in September to surprising success. It hit several bestseller lists in the first week and generated conversation across social media platforms. People connected with the story, shared their own experiences, started using language from the book to describe their family dynamics. I did a small book tour, readings and signings in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. At every event, people lined up to tell me their stories, to say thank you, to express relief that someone had named something they'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. At the Los Angeles signing, a young woman in her early 20s waited until everyone else had gone. She approached the table with a worn copy of my book covered in sticky notes and underlining. "This changed my life," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I've been supporting my family financially for 3 years while they tell me my art isn't a real career. Reading your story helped me realize I don't have to choose between loving them and respecting myself. I can do both, just not the way they want me to." I felt tears prick my eyes. "You're exactly right," I said. "It's the hardest thing, but it's the only thing that works." She thanked me again and left, and I sat there for a moment, feeling the weight and gift of connection, of telling a true story and having it matter to someone else. In October, Ethan and I found the house, a small craftsman in Wallingford, ironically just 3 blocks from my old apartment, with good bones but dated everything. We made an offer that was accepted, and suddenly, we were homeowners, standing in an empty living room, planning renovations and arguing lovingly about whether to keep the original built-ins. "This is ours," Ethan said, pulling me close. "We're building this together." I leaned into him, looking around at the space full of potential. "We are," I agreed, "and nobody else gets to tell us how." We spent November gutting the kitchen and planning major updates. My channel documented the process, and viewers loved seeing the behind-the-scenes reality of renovation, the mistakes and problem-solving, and genuine collaboration between Ethan and me. Our subscriber bases overlapped and grew, and we started talking about launching a joint channel for future projects. The show's second season was greenlit before the first had even finished airing. The production company wanted to expand, maybe do a spin-off focused on sustainable building practices that would be more Ethan's domain. Everything was expanding, growing, becoming more than I'd imagined. On Thanksgiving, Ethan and I hosted dinner at our half-renovated house. We invited Vanessa and her husband, and to my surprise, she asked if our parents could come too. I hesitated, then agreed. When they arrived, my mother brought flowers and my father brought wine, both of them uncertain but trying. We ate at a folding table in what would eventually be the dining room, surrounded by paint samples and construction dust. It was imperfect and awkward at moments, but also real. My mother complimented the house and actually meant it.
My father asked genuine questions about the renovation plans. Vanessa told a funny story about a home improvement disaster she'd attempted. We laughed together, cautiously but authentically. After dinner, while we were cleaning up, my mother pulled me aside. "I've been wanting to tell you something," she said quietly. "I started watching your videos. Really watching them, not just glancing. You're extraordinarily talented, Kira. The way you explain things, the way you make people feel capable, that's a gift." "Thank you, Mom," I said, the words catching slightly in my throat. "That means a lot." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm working on seeing better now." "I know," I said. "I see that." As everyone was leaving, my father hung back for a moment. "This house is going to be beautiful," he said. "You and Ethan make a good team." "We do," I agreed. He nodded, then added, "Your grandmother would be very proud. She always believed in you." I touched the locket at my throat. "I know. I feel her with me sometimes, especially when I'm building something." "That's good," he said. "Keep her close." December arrived with the first real snow of the season, blanketing Seattle in unexpected white. Ethan and I worked on the house whenever we weren't filming, slowly transforming it from a dated shell into something that reflected us. On Christmas Eve, we sat in front of the fireplace we'd just finished repointing, drinking hot chocolate and watching snow fall past the windows. "I've been thinking about something," I said. Ethan looked over at me, eyebrows raised. "Good or bad thinking?" "Good," I said. "Really good. I want to start a foundation, something that helps young creators from difficult family situations get the resources and support they need to build sustainable creative careers. Funding, mentorship, legal resources, financial literacy, all the things I had to figure out alone." Ethan's face lit up. "That's brilliant. You could change so many lives." I pulled out my phone and showed him notes I'd been making. "I want to call it the Helen Carver Foundation, after my grandmother. She's the one who taught me that building something real matters more than maintaining appearances." He read through my notes, nodding. "This is incredible, Kira. When do you want to start?" "Soon," I said. "I'm meeting with Derek next week to talk about structure and funding. I want to launch by spring." We spent the rest of the evening brainstorming, getting excited about the possibility of turning my experience into something that could help others avoid the isolation I'd felt. It felt like the right next step, the way to transform pain into purpose. The foundation launched in March, funded initially by a significant portion of my book proceeds and ongoing channel revenue. We selected our first cohort of 10 young creators, each dealing with family situations that threatened their ability to pursue their creative work. Watching them receive support and validation and practical resources felt like healing something in myself. Every mentorship call, every grant awarded, every legal consultation we facilitated was a small act of correction, a chance to give someone else what I desperately needed. By the time spring arrived, fully present and warm, I stood in the backyard of our finished house, watching Ethan plant a garden. We'd chosen vegetables and herbs and a few flowers that attracted butterflies. It was small but intentional, a growing thing we'd tend together. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Mom wants to know if we can do a family dinner next month, your place. She promises to behave." I smiled and typed back, "Sure, tell her to bring dessert. I can't promise the table will be completely finished, but we'll make it work." Her response was immediate. "She's crying happy tears. Thank you." I put my phone away and walked over to where Ethan was working. He looked up, dirt on his hands, happiness in his eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's good," I said. "Really good." That evening, as the sun set and painted everything golden, I sat on our back porch with a glass of wine and thought about the journey. About being kicked out of a family that didn't see me, about building an empire in secret, about the moment I chose truth over comfort, about the relationships that broke and the ones that slowly mended. About the new family I'd created, chosen rather than given, built on honesty rather than assumption. I thought about my grandmother's letters and her advice to take up space, to make beautiful things, to choose truth every single time. I'd done that. Not perfectly, not without pain, but I'd done it. I'd refused to disappear. I'd built something too real to ignore. My channel had grown to 15 million subscribers.
The show was renewed for a third season. The book was being translated into 12 languages. The foundation was changing lives. The house was nearly complete. Ethan was planting a garden. My family was learning to see me. And I was here, fully present, fully visible, fully myself. The life I'd built wasn't the one my family had imagined for me. It was better. It was mine, and that was enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.